I woke up today and didn't recognize myself. The mirror showed the same face, the same eyes, the same hands that have folded in prayer 1,000 times before. But something was different. Something had shifted in the night. Or maybe it had been shifting for months and I was only now brave enough to admit it. My faith felt thin, like fabric worn through at the seams, barely holding together. My hope had cracked somewhere along the way, and I couldn't remember exactly when the fracture began. Was it the unanswered prayer? The door that closed when I was so certain it would open? The silence that stretched on when I was desperate to hear just one word from heaven? I don't know anymore. I sat up slowly, my body heavy with more than just sleep. The morning light was already filtering through the curtains, soft and golden, painting everything in shades of amber and honey. It should have been beautiful. It should have filled me with something like gratitude or peace. But instead, I felt like a stranger in my own life, caught somewhere between who I used to be and whoever I'm becoming. And I'm not sure I like either version. The weight of it pressed against my chest as I sat there on the edge of my bed, feet on the cold floor, hands in my lap. I looked down at them. These hands that have reached for him so many times. And I wondered if they had finally grown too tired to reach anymore. I thought about not praying today. I actually considered it, just letting the morning pass in silence, just existing without trying to believe, without trying to hope, without trying to be strong for one more day. Because I'm tired. I'm so tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep can fix. It's deeper than that. It's the kind of exhaustion that settles into your bones when you've been fighting battles no one can see, carrying burdens no one knows about, smiling through pain that has no name. I've been strong for so long. I've held it together when everything around me was falling apart. I've encouraged others when my own spirit was breaking. I've declared faith when doubt was whispering in my ear. I've praised through tears, worshipped through confusion, and trusted when nothing made sense. But this morning, I had nothing left. The silence in my room felt heavy, thick with all the words I've prayed that seemed to disappear into nothing. All the tears I've cried that no one saw. All the nights I stayed awake asking why, begging for clarity, pleading for just a glimpse of what he's doing in my life, and hearing nothing in return. I stood up slowly, my legs unsteady beneath me, and walked to the window. I pulled back the curtain and let the morning pour in, all gold and gentle, touching everything with light. The world outside was waking up. Birds were singing their first songs of the day. The sky was painted in soft pinks and oranges. Everything looked so peaceful, so certain, so full of purpose. And I felt lost in the middle of it all, lost in my own story, lost in my own faith, lost somewhere between the woman I thought I would be and the woman standing here now, wondering if she has anything left to give. I pressed my forehead against the cool glass and closed my eyes. I don't know how to do this anymore, I whispered to no one, or maybe to him. I wasn't sure if he was listening. I wasn't sure if he'd ever heard me at all. The doubt tasted bitter on my tongue, but I couldn't swallow it down this time. I couldn't pretend it wasn't there. I couldn't hide behind hopeful words, or borrowed faith, or the strength I'd performed for everyone else. This was just me, raw, empty, barely holding on. I thought about all the times I've told others that God is faithful, that He never leaves, that His love is constant and His presence is sure. I meant those words when I said them. I believed them with everything in me. But this morning, standing at this window, watching the world wake up without me, I couldn't feel any of it. Where was He when I needed Him most? Where was His voice when I was crying out in the darkness? Where was His hand when I was drowning in confusion and fear? I know what I'm supposed to say. I know what faith is supposed to look like. I'm supposed to trust even when I can't see. I'm supposed to believe even when I don't understand. I'm supposed to stand firm even when the ground beneath me is shaking. But what if I can't anymore? What if I've reached the end of my strength and there's nothing left? What if this is where my faith finally breaks? The tears came quietly, slipping down my cheeks like whispers. I didn't try to stop them. I didn't have the energy to fight them anymore. I just let them fall, let them carry some of this heaviness out of me, let them speak what my words couldn't say. I turned away from the window and sat down on the floor, my back against the wall, my knees pulled up to my chest. The light was spilling across the room now, touching everything, but it felt distant somehow, like it belonged to a world I was no longer part of. I sat there in that strange space between night and morning, between giving up and holding on, between who I was and who I'm afraid I'm becoming, and I couldn't pray. I tried to form words, tried to reach for him the way I always have, but nothing came. My heart was too heavy, my spirit was too worn, my faith was too fractured, so I just sat there, silent, broken, ready to let go of everything I'd been clinging to because I didn't have the strength to hold on anymore. The room was so quiet, the kind of quiet that usually makes me uncomfortable, the kind I try to fill with music or noise or anything to keep from being alone with my own thoughts. But this morning, I didn't reach for my phone. I didn't turn on music. I didn't try to distract myself from what I was feeling. I just sat in the stillness. And in that stillness, something began to shift. It was subtle at first. So subtle I almost didn't notice it. A warmth that started somewhere deep in my chest. Gentle and soft, like the first rays of sun after a long winter. It didn't demand anything from me. It didn't require me to be strong or faithful or certain. It just was. I took a breath, deeper than I had in days, and felt my shoulders begin to release tension I didn't know I was carrying. The air moving through my lungs felt cleaner somehow, lighter, like it was bringing something with it that I desperately needed but couldn't name. I closed my eyes and let myself sink into the quiet, not fighting it anymore, not trying to fill it with words or faith or desperate attempts to feel something I couldn't manufacture. And that's when I felt it, not heard it, felt it, like a presence settling into the room with me, like arms I couldn't see but could somehow sense wrapping around my weary heart, like a voice that wasn't audible but was somehow louder than any sound I'd ever heard. You're still mine. 3 words, simple, quiet, but they crashed into me like a wave, washing over every doubt, every fear, every moment I thought I'd been abandoned. You're still mine. Not, you were mine when you were strong. Not, you'll be mine again when you get yourself together. Not, you could be mine if you try harder. You're still mine. Present tense. Right now, in this moment, in this mess, in this brokenness. The tears changed then. They were no longer tears of despair or exhaustion or surrender to defeat. They were something else entirely. They were tears of relief, of recognition, of remembering something I'd forgotten. I belong to him, not because I've earned it, not because I've been perfect or strong or faithful enough, not because I've prayed the right prayers or believed hard enough, or kept myself together when everything was falling apart. I belong to him simply because he says I do. The warmth in my chest grew stronger, spreading through my body like light breaking through darkness. I could feel it in my fingertips, in my tired bones, in the parts of me that had forgotten what it felt like to be held. I thought you'd left me, I whispered into the quiet, my voice breaking. I thought I'd done something wrong. I thought maybe I wasn't worth staying for. The presence deepened, and with it came a knowing that had no words but spoke louder than any sermon I'd ever heard. He'd never left, not for a moment, not for a breath, not even when I'd stopped feeling him, stopped hearing him, stopped reaching for him. He'd been right there the whole time, waiting, not waiting for me to get stronger or more faithful or less broken, just waiting, holding space for my weariness, making room for my doubt, letting me be exactly where I was without shame or judgment or disappointment. You're still mine. The words echoed in my spirit again, and this time I felt them settling into the broken places, like light finding its way into cracks, not fixing them, not erasing them, just filling them with something that made the brokenness feel less like failure and more like proof that I'm human, that I'm real, that I'm his. I opened my eyes and looked around the room. The light had fully arrived now, golden and warm, touching everything with gentle certainty. The same room, the same morning. But somehow, everything looked different. Or maybe I was different. I wasn't suddenly fixed. I wasn't suddenly strong. I wasn't suddenly filled with unwavering faith and perfect trust. The questions were still there. The weariness was still real. The struggles that brought me to this moment hadn't disappeared, but something had changed in me. Something fundamental. Something that had nothing to do with my circumstances and everything to do with whose I am. I thought I had to find my way back to him. I thought I had to climb out of this dark place, dust myself off, get myself together, and then come before him worthy of his attention. But he came to find me. He met me right here on the floor, in my brokenness, in my doubt, in my exhaustion. He didn't wait for me to be ready. He didn't require me to have it all figured out. He just showed up in the quiet and reminded me of the truth I'd forgotten. I'm his, still, always, forever. I pushed myself up from the floor, my legs steadier now, my heart lighter, even though the weight hadn't fully lifted. I walked back to the window and looked out at the morning, really looked this time, seeing it not as a world moving on without me, but as a canvas painted fresh each day by the same God who hasn't forgotten my name. The birds were still singing, the sky was still beautiful, the light was still gentle, but now I could receive it. Now I could let it touch me without feeling like I had to earn it or deserve it, or prove myself worthy of it. Thank you, I breathed out, my hand pressed against the glass. Thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for reminding me who I am when I forget. Thank you for loving me even when I can't love myself. The tears kept coming, but they were different now. They were cleansing. They were healing. They were washing away the lie that I had to be perfect to be loved, that I had to be strong to be held, that I had to have all the answers to be his. I am his because he chose me, not because I chose right or believed perfectly or never questioned or never struggled. I am his because his love doesn't depend on my strength. It depends on his faithfulness, and he is faithful, even when I can't feel it, even when I can't see it, even when I'm sitting on the floor ready to give up. He is faithful. I turned away from the window and looked at my bed, unmade and messy, sheets tangled from a restless night. I looked at my hands again, no longer questioning if they could reach for him, but marveling that he would reach for me first. This morning had started with me not recognizing myself, feeling like a stranger in my own life. But now, standing here in this light, I was beginning to remember who I am. I am a daughter who is deeply loved. I am a child who is fiercely protected. I am a soul who is eternally held. Not because of what I do or how I perform, or whether I have enough faith to move mountains. I am those things because he says, I am. You're still mine. The words had become a heartbeat now, steady and sure, pulsing through me with every breath. I could feel them rewriting the narrative I'd been believing, the one that said I was too broken, too tired, too lost to still belong to him. That narrative was a lie, and truth was standing in my room with me, gentle and patient, waiting for me to remember. I walked to my dresser and looked in the mirror again. The same face looked back at me, but I saw her differently now. I saw the tear tracks on her cheeks, not as signs of weakness, but as evidence of a heart that still feels, that still hopes, that still believes even when belief is hard. I saw the exhaustion in her eyes not as failure, but as proof that she's been fighting battles worth fighting, that she hasn't given up even when she wanted to, that she's still here even when here feels impossible. I saw the woman who woke up lost and ready to surrender, and I saw the woman who was found right where she fell. Both versions are true. Both versions are me. Both versions are his. I don't know what today will bring, I said softly to my reflection. I don't know if I'll feel this way tomorrow or if the doubt will come creeping back in. I don't know if I'll be strong enough for whatever comes next. I paused, pressing my hand against my heart, feeling it beat steady and sure beneath my palm. But I know I'm yours, and somehow, that's enough. The morning had fully arrived now. I could hear the world waking up outside my window, cars starting, doors opening, life beginning again the way it does every day. And I was part of it, not separate from it, not lost in it, but woven into it, held by hands I can't see but can feel everywhere. I thought about all the mornings that would come after this one. Some would be easy, some would be hard, some would start with hope, and some would start with the same weariness that brought me to this moment. But every single one of them, I would still be his. That truth didn't depend on how I felt, or what I faced, or whether I could muster up enough faith to believe it. It simply was. Constant, unchanging, eternal. I took another deep breath and felt it fill every empty space inside me, carrying with it the certainty that I am loved beyond measure, held beyond understanding, and claimed beyond any doubt that tries to tell me otherwise. The woman who woke up lost this morning was found by the same God who has been chasing her heart since before she knew his name. He didn't wait for her to figure it out. He didn't require her to be ready. He just met her in the quiet and whispered the truth she needed most. You're still mine. I am. I always have been. I always will be. This knowing settled into me like stones sinking into still water, creating ripples that touched every part of me that had questioned, every part that had doubted, every part that had been ready to give up. I thought belonging to him meant being strong enough to hold on, but maybe it actually means being loved enough to let go of the performance, to let go of the pretending, to let go of the idea that I have to earn what he's already freely given. Maybe faith isn't about never doubting. Maybe it's about being honest enough to admit when we do, and trusting that his love is big enough to hold our questions without being threatened by them. Maybe hope isn't about always feeling certain. Maybe it's about choosing to believe that dawn will come even when we're sitting in the darkest part of night, and knowing that whether we can see the light or not, it's already on its way. Maybe strength isn't about never breaking. Maybe it's about being willing to shatter completely and trusting that the hands that formed us in the beginning are the same hands that will put us back together, not into who we were, but into who we're becoming. I walked to my bed and sat down on the edge, my hands resting in my lap, my heart fuller than it had been in months. The heaviness was still there, but it was different now. It wasn't the weight of despair. It was the weight of being held, of being known, of being loved so completely that even my breaking couldn't separate me from him. The golden light stretched across the floor now, reaching toward me like an invitation. I stood and stepped into it, letting it warm my skin, feeling it soak into the cold places that had forgotten what it felt like to be touched by grace. I'm sorry, I whispered, though I wasn't entirely sure what I was apologizing for. Sorry for doubting. Sorry for being human. Sorry for not being strong enough. But even as the words left my lips, I felt that gentle correction in my spirit, that quiet knowing that needed no apology because there was no accusation. He wasn't disappointed in my weakness. He wasn't frustrated with my questions. He wasn't waiting for me to be better before he would fully love me. He loved me right now, completely. In this exact moment, with all my doubts and all my fears and all my brokenness laid bare before him. You're still mine. Not you'll be mine again when you're stronger. Not you can be mine if you try harder. Just you're still mine. Present, certain, unchanging. The truth of it overwhelmed me in the most beautiful way. I had spent so much time trying to find my way back to him, trying to manufacture the faith I thought I needed, trying to prove I was worthy of his attention. But he had never asked me to find my way back. He had simply been waiting for me to remember that I never actually left his heart. I could wonder. I could doubt. I could question and struggle and sit on the floor ready to give up. But none of that changed whose I was. None of that altered the claim he placed on my life before I ever took my first breath. I am his, completely, eternally, irrevocably. The morning had brought me more than just a new day. It had brought me back to myself, to the truth of who I am beneath all the striving and performing and trying to be enough. I am enough because he says I am. Not because I've done enough or believed enough or been strong enough, but because his love doesn't measure worth by performance. It simply declares it by presence. And his presence was here, in this room, in this moment, in the quiet space between my breaking and my becoming. I walked back to the window one more time, but this time I opened it. Cool morning air rushed in, carrying with it the scent of earth and grass and the promise of a day I hadn't earned, but was being given anyway. Grace. That's what this was. Grace that met me in my mess and didn't demand I clean myself up before receiving it. Grace that saw me at my weakest and loved me at my most real. Grace that whispered truth when lies were screaming louder. I don't deserve this, I said into the breeze. Though even as I said it, I knew I was missing the point. That's what grace is. It's not about deserving. It's about being loved beyond the logic of earning, beyond the mathematics of merit, beyond any system that tries to measure worth by works. I am loved. Period. Full stop. No conditions attached. The tears came again, softer now, gentler, like rain after a long drought. They weren't tears of pain anymore. They were tears of relief, of release, of finally letting myself receive what had been offered all along, but I'd been too tired or too proud or too broken to accept. I thought I had to climb out of this valley before I could approach him. I thought I had to fix myself before I could ask for help. I thought I had to have my faith figured out before I could admit I was struggling. But he met me in the valley. He helped me while I was still broken. He heard me even when I couldn't find words to pray, because that's who he is. Not a God who waits at the finish line for us to arrive perfect and polished, but a God who runs into the middle of our mess and says, "You're still mine. You've always been mine. You will always be mine." I looked down at my hands again. These hands that had folded in prayer so many times they knew the posture by memory. They were empty now, open, no longer grasping or striving or trying to hold on to something I was afraid of losing. And in their emptiness, they were finally in the right position to receive. I lifted them up, palms open to the morning light, and I felt it, the filling, not with answers or certainty or perfect faith, but with presence, with peace, with the unmistakable knowing that I am held, I am loved, I am his. "Thank you," I whispered again, and this time the words felt like more than just politeness or ritual. They felt like worship, pure, simple, true. Thank you for not leaving me even when I felt alone. Thank you for speaking even when I couldn't hear. Thank you for holding me even when I couldn't feel your arms. Thank you for being faithful when my faith was failing. Thank you for being constant when everything else was changing. Thank you for being love when I forgot what love felt like. Thank you for reminding me that I'm still yours, that I've always been yours, that I will always be yours. The words flowed out of me now, not rehearsed or performed, but raw and real and honest. This was worship, not from my strength, but from my weakness, not from my certainty, but from my doubt, not from my having it all together, but from my falling apart. And somehow, that made it more true, more real, more acceptable than any perfect prayer I could have crafted. Because he doesn't want my performance. He wants my heart, and my heart, broken and weary as it was finally his again. Not because I'd found my way back to him, but because he'd never stopped holding it in the first place. The morning stretched out before me now, full of possibility and promise and the sacred gift of beginning again. I didn't know what it would hold. I didn't know if I'd face struggles or battles or moments when the doubt would try to creep back in. But I knew this. I wouldn't face any of it alone, because I am His and He is mine. And that truth is bigger than anything I will ever face. I closed my eyes one more time and let the moment wash over me completely. The light on my face, the breeze through the window, the steady beat of my heart reminding me I'm alive, I'm here, I'm His, you're still mine. Yes, yes, I am. And that changes everything. I opened my eyes and smiled, really smiled, for the first time in what felt like forever. It wasn't a smile that said everything was fixed or perfect or easy. It was a smile that said I remembered who I belonged to, and that was enough to keep going. I turned from the window and faced my day, whatever it would bring. I faced it not with perfect faith or unwavering strength or absolute certainty about how everything would work out. I faced it knowing one simple, powerful, life-changing truth. I am His, still, always, forever. And if that's the only thing I know today, it's more than enough. Because belonging to Him isn't about what I can do. It's about what He's already done. It's not about my strength to hold on. It's about His refusal to let go. I am His. He is mine. And this morning, when I woke up lost and ready to give up, He whispered the truth that brought me back to life. You're still mine. Yes, Lord, I am. Thank you for never forgetting. Thank you for reminding me. Thank you for loving me back to myself. I'm yours, completely, eternally, gratefully. This morning started in darkness, but it ends in light, not because my circumstances changed, but because I remembered whose I am, and that makes all the difference.